Federal Executive Council approves over 30 billion naira for food security and Ogoni cleanup.
This intervention will provide them with fertilizer, seedlings, chemicals, some of them are poultry.
Senate to investigate application of the electoral law by INEC in the 2019 general elections.
We must be able, as elected members and representatives of the people, to be able to tell the truth where it should be.
President, Court of Appeal reads Riot Act to justices handling election petitions.
Descend on any judge who is found wanting in the discharge of his or her duties.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss issues around the forthcoming supplementary elections.
Following the March 9th governorship elections held across Nigeria, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, announced that the polls in 6 states were inconclusive.
Now, the affected states were and still are Kano, Sokoto, Plateau, Benue, Bauchi, and Adamawa. And supplementary elections in the states, or the conclusion of collation as the case may be, have been scheduled for this Saturday, March the 23rd, 2019.
Now, you recall, Kingsley, that INEC declared elections in those states inconclusive, citing the margin of lead between two parties with the highest number of votes as less than the number of cancelled ballots.
That's right, Kirian, and there is also the case of Rivers, where the electoral process for the governorship election was initially suspended, but INEC says that it will resume collation in order to conclude the process.
But of course, already some of the supplementary elections are being threatened by litigation from political actors who would leave no stone unturned to swing the supplementary polls in their favor.
Well, such litigation obviously have also triggered concerns as to how many of the inconclusive elections will stand a chance of being concluded this Saturday.
So what are the real issues here playing out ahead of Saturday's supplementary polls? Will there be a walkover or a tightrope for INEC, given the series of litigation we've had? Now, will security deployments be heavy or light?
Well, Kirian, there will be answers, hopefully, to those questions and more, as we today focus on supplementary elections in this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadola, and I'd like to welcome you to the program, reaching you as always on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And we are broadcasting live from our Abuja headquarters studios in Nigeria's capital city.
And I am Kirian Umar. It's indeed good to have you join us this morning on the program. And as always, we will be bringing you complimentary segments, which will include the newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But let's begin the day with the morning news by Abdulmalik Adio. Hello, Abdulmalik.
Hello, good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. It's good to have you join us on the morning news. And the Federal Executive Council has approved over 27 billion naira intervention fund for agriculture in states affected by flooding, insecurity, and other devastating conflict. Also approved by the Council is 5 more remediation contracts valued at over 3 billion naira for Ogoni cleanup in the Niger Delta.
The National Food Security Council considered the importance of helping them restore activity, particularly agricultural activity. So the Council approved 8,558,529,755 naira, and the beneficiaries are estimated at about 69,872 people.
Now, elections are strong parameters for measuring a country's democratic development. This is why at the conclusion of any electoral cycle, a review of the process becomes imperative. The Senate at Wednesday's plenary urged that some challenges during the 2019 general elections need to be addressed immediately and therefore resolved to investigate application of the electoral law by the Independent National Electoral Commission.
To investigate all perceived inconsistent application of electoral laws by INEC in the 2019 elections.
We must be able, as elected members and representatives of the people, be able to tell the truth where it should be.
Those in favor of prayer 4, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Judicial officers, especially justices that are handling election petitions, are being charged to be upright in dispensing justice by upholding the rule of law. President Court of Appeal Justice Zainab Bokachua gave the charge at an induction course that is underway in Abuja for judicial officers who will be involved in the administration of justice on electoral matters.
Each and every one of you would be closely monitored by my office, and I will not hesitate to descend on any judge who is found wanting in the discharge of his or her duties. By the end of this induction training, you'll all be abreast with what is expected of you, and I'm sure by the time you resume your duty post, you'll be ready to carry out the task assiduously.
And the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in Adamawa State has confirmed the receipt of a court order restraining it from conducting the governorship supplementary election in the state, pending the determination of a principal suit on the exclusion of logo of a political party on the ballot paper of the 9th March governorship election in the state.
We will be waiting to hear the outcome of whatever decision the court will take tomorrow. I will certainly comply with the order.
And the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has adjourned the case seeking to stop INEC from collating the governorship election results in Bauchi State to Thursday, 21st March 2019. The presiding judge, Justice Iyang Ekwo, gave the order this Wednesday in Abuja. And the People's Democratic Party has enjoined its members and supporters nationwide not to despair but work assiduously towards the party's victory in the coming supplementary elections across 6 states of the country. National chairman of the party, Uche Secunda, stated this during the party's 85th Emergency National Executive Committee meeting in Abuja.
Not do anything that can cause a breach of the peace, but to remain firm and resolute.
Now, business-oriented agencies are set up to boost revenue generation for government. When 3 revenue-generating agencies appeared before the House Representatives Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs for Budget Defense, the committee members were dismayed that the expenditure of the agencies exceeds what they generate annually.
So what we do is we bring in people from different resource people from different areas to come to augment what we have.
We are a service-providing organization. The Act is also supported by other acts, not just ASPON Act itself.
Whatever we are spending or whatever we are receiving, these things are government money and is the money for the Nigerians.
And wife of the president, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, who is also the Global Tuberculosis Ambassador, has called on Nigerians to avail themselves for the diagnosis and treatment of tuberculosis in order to end the deadly diseases across the globe. Mrs. Buhari made the call during an outreach tuberculosis program in Kobe Village, Kuruduma district of the Abuja Municipal Area Council in preparatory of the 2019 World Tuberculosis Day.
One of the killer disease of our time. Therefore, I would like to take this opportunity to call on all individuals in Nigeria with the history of over 2 weeks of cough and fever to visit the healthcare center that does TB check. The TB screening and treatment is free.
As a mother, it encourages me to call all people to take care of your family, take care of the people around you.
And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly with Kingsley and Kirian after this break.
Team huddle. But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And now for us to have our business stories, here is our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
Now, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, re-echoed federal government's commitment to strengthen relevant market institutions to reduce risk by building a healthy and competitive financial system that is better positioned to support the private sector, as well as sustain the development of the nation's economy. The minister stated this at the maiden edition night of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in Lagos. She maintained that capital markets play a critical role in the development of the economy through mobilization of long-term savings for investment, as well as efficient pricing of financial instruments. Let's now take a look at how the capital market fared on Wednesday, 20th of March, 2019. And Minister of State for Aviation Hadi Sirika says there is need to urgently address aviation infrastructural gap for the socio-economic growth of the country. He says this requires the implementation of international civil aviation organization standards and policies, plans and programs by all African states, as Africa currently accounts for 4% of global air transport services and has the highest potentials for growth in aviation development.
Significant upgrade and expansion to meet the requirement of the projected growth, but has to overcome the problem of insufficient access to financial resources for aviation development and modernization.
It's true that infrastructure development remains a key driver for progress across the African continent and a critical enabler for productivity and sustainable economic growth. It contributes significantly to the creation of employment and the downstream benefits, including human capital development, poverty reduction, and ultimately the attainment of the African Union Agenda 2063 on integration of the continent.
Many thanks for watching. I'm Comfort Amodu.
Thank you, Comfort, for that business package. Next for us here is newspaper review.
right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kyrian.
Okay. Good morning, Bayo. You're welcome.
Thank you.
We have about 5 newspapers
Six
here.
papers, actually,
6 papers
plus
here.
one having the editorial.
All right, and let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. The Daily Trust newspaper this morning, below the nameplate, we have a rowdy session in Senate over militarization of elections. We are on Daily Trust newspaper. If you can see that, the Daily Trust newspaper. All right, now the lead story in the Daily Trust newspaper is the North Central battle for Senate presidency. As a matter of fact, Kinsley, let's go to the next newspaper here. We will return to Daily Trust much later when we will be in the position to show the headlines to our viewers. So let's go to Leadership newspaper. Leadership newspaper for this morning. Below the nameplate of Leadership newspaper, AMCON seeks reintroduction of failed Banks Act. And now the lead story on Leadership newspaper, election petitions tribunal, judges placed on watch list, is on page 4 with the 2 riders. A appeal court president warns against frivolous adjournment. Now courts to decide on Bauchi Adamawa governorship polls today. And our federal government approves 27.46 billion naira for states hit by insecurity and flooding. And just below the photograph on the Leadership newspaper, we have Saraki, Lai Mohammed, others mourn Isupadeki. It's on page 12. Now, Senate suspends plenary for 2 weeks to work on the budget. That's on page 15. And then Nigeria rated 85th on Global Happiness Index. You get that story on page 16. Now, PMB declines assent to 5 bills. That has been gotten on page 5 of Leadership newspaper.
Just before you return to the Daily Trust, let me take headlines from the Punch newspaper. Punch newspaper from, I just go from top to bottom because you have stories on the elections and then public health as well as other matters on the economy. Now, Punch newspaper from above the nameplate, experts laud federal government's plan to cut stakes in JVs with Shell and others. JVs, of course, stands for joint ventures. Rowdy session as Senate condemns militarization of 2019 polls. Measles outbreak kills 13 children in Borno. That's according to UNICEF. In flooding and insecurity, Federal Executive Council okays 27.4 billion naira for victims. That's on page 16. Now, 2 earpieces beside the nameplate. Atiku meets Southern Middle Belt leaders, says justice will be done. And telcos, that's telecommunications companies, plan tariff review and call rates may rise. Now, the lead stories, of course, is on the rerun elections, and it says Abdulsalami panel meets parties, INEC and police tighten security. PDP petitions NJC, that's the Judicial Council, over judge's ruling on Bauchi results collation. Details can be found on page 2. Now, the photographs on the front page of the Punch newspaper have a caption, members of the Nigerian Union of Pensioners, federal branch in Lagos State, protesting over the non-payment of pension arrears by the federal government. And the protest took place yesterday in Lagos. At the foot of the front page of the Punch, court rejects request to stop announcement of Rivers election results, page 8. Policemen and drivers clash in Lagos, 1 killed, 10 buses vandalized, pages 4 and 5. Stay away from CBT centers, JAMB warns parents.
Okay, before Bayo comes in, sorry, let's go back to Daily Trust, and get stories on the Daily Trust newspaper. Below the nameplate, rowdy session in the Senate over militarization of elections. And then gunmen killed 10 in Benue community, is on page 4. Now, Bauchi governorship, INEC challenges court powers to stop coalition of results, is on page 13. And now the lead story, Northeast, North Central battle for Senate presidency. PDP plots to retain deputy Senate president. That's the lead story. And now below the photograph, just at the foot of the Daily Trust, how federal government generated 3.6 1.62 trillion naira from VAT in 4 years. And Atiku, governors absent at PDP NEC meeting. And our elections, Justice Bukachua warns tribunal members. And let's bring it by now.
Well, let's start with the judiciary. The Federal High Court, Abuja, yesterday declined to grant an ex parte application by African Action Congress, AAC, to stop the continuation of collation of governorship results for Rivers State. The Justice Inyang Eko held that the ex parte application cannot be granted without hearing the other side, that is the other party. Accordingly, the court ordered that the process be served on the other side for them to come to court to show cause why prayer sought by the AAC should not be granted. A faction of the All Progressive Congress in Rivers State had actually adopted the AAC as its candidate because he could not contest in that election. Still at the courts, for Bauchi State, INEC has filed its objection to the order of the Federal High Court Abuja halting the collation announcement of governorship election results in that state. In an affidavit deposed by a legal officer of INEC, INEC deposed that the commission says the court lacks jurisdiction to dabble into post-election matters, such as the outcome of the Bauchi governorship election. INEC is contending that an election petition tribunal had exclusive jurisdiction to review the decision of INEC on electoral matters. Hearing continues today. Also in Adamawa, INEC and Adamawa is not sure of holding supplementary election March 23rd, that is on Saturday. The resident electoral commissioner, Barrister Kashim Gaidam, says though all preparations are concluded, the commission will have to wait the outcome of the court ruling today. It may be recalled that Adamawa State High Court, Yola, on 14th March, suspended the election process for an alleged exclusion of the logo of the Movement for Restoration and Defense of Democracy, MRDD, in the election. The hearing at the Adamawa High Court is to be held today. You recall, Kingsley, there was your reaction the other day that there's conflicting dispositions as regards the electoral jurisprudence in these instances. And I think part of that is what the President of the Court of Appeal warned judges yesterday, to stay within the principles of the judicial guidelines and not go overboard. But the one thing about our judicial system is that when such challenges come up, they go a long way to develop our jurisprudence or legal system, as the case may be.
Well, to an extent, yes. Then to another extent, not exactly. Ask me why. Okay, and the reason is simple. Where jurisdiction is cardinal, you know, to the proceedings of any court or any tribunal. If you do not have the competence, the legal competence to hear and try a matter, you obviously you run into troubled waters. But there are two issues here when courts can assume jurisdiction. There are pre-election matters, and then there are also matters arising from the conduct of an election. It is clear which of the courts or tribunal has jurisdiction on matters arising from the conduct of an election. You have a plethora of decided cases on such matters. So that is where the confusion is coming from. You find courts, in my opinion, that do not, on the face of it, have the competence to handle some of the matters, giving pronouncements. And more worrisome is that some of these injunctions are being given ex parte, that is without hearing from the other party. Now, the question, Kyrian, we are discussing this later in the program. You are issuing these orders now, and there is also a time delimited for the determination of these cases. If you recall, part of the constitutional amendment that we have had up to the 4th iteration, it had to do with the fact that it had to delimit the time so that cases are concluded before the 29th of May. So you are issuing these orders and so on and so forth. Perhaps at some point they will come back, you know, to get all of that done. Now, the issue of the President of the Court of Appeal, her Lordship, had to do with the address she gave to members of the Election Petitions Tribunal. These are tribunal judges who will preside over petitions arising from the conduct of the elections. But, you know, there's the potential of sometimes, you know, misinterpreting the advisory by the president of the Court of Appeal, warning the judges they are under watch and so on and so forth. What could that mean? Under watch, of course, stay within the bounds of the law,
yes.
But also dispense justice fearlessly. So that the fact that you are under watch doesn't then mean that, you must canalize your decision, to fit a certain... Are you with me? So,
you see, from the point of view of a layman, one really wonders why these, should I call it misunderstandings or misconceptions? When you're talking about what the law says, one wouldn't have thought that there should be arguments on who has jurisdiction over an election matters, because the entire thing has been clearly stated. So why the the argument of who has jurisdiction over an issue or jurisprudence or what have you? So for me, the tribunals have been constituted, and they have a job in their hands. That's as simple as that. So whatever explanations coming from the other perspectives concerning the law and how it will be practiced, worries some of us who don't understand, the law. And when something is clearly stated in the Constitution, there would have been no reason, for anybody to, raise any eyebrow about what has been said, and should be followed, administratively.
Kyrian, you are right about, Bayo, just let me, Kyrian, you are right. Now, part of the complaints that you hear from the highest court in the land, that is to say the Supreme Court, is that matters that are otherwise settled still find their way on appeal to the Supreme Court, which is why the Supreme Court's desk is clogged. Matters that ordinarily are settled, some of them interlocutory.
Apparently, abuse of court process. But sometimes some of the arguments, just like every issue, have two sides of the coin. In fact, a similar case was raised in the case of the Code of Conduct Tribunal about issues about jurisdiction. And while some were arguing that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has exclusive jurisdiction on matters relating to the Code of Conduct that excludes other courts. So, again, this is what I mean that...
But in the case of again, people also are arguing that the CCT, does not have, the competence, to take the action that he took.
Good. So this is why I say that by the time we go through the processes, at the end of the day, a decision will evolve and our legal system will be the better for it, because positions will have, precedents will have evolved, and we will learn. We will learn from this.
Because this will reoccur again. It has been happening over time. That's the issue.
The other story that I think I should need to draw concern is a story that broke at Osogbo. It is an area that is called Hallelujah. Some Muslim worshippers in Osogbo narrowly escaped being attacked by gunmen in the estate. Some gunmen trailed them as they were heading towards the mosque for the dawn prayers. They raised alarm, and the Deputy Commissioner of Police in the state, Abu Mustafa, mobilized, and upon hearing that distant call, they were able then to arrest one of the gunmen and also retrieve a gun from him. The police public relations officer of Osogbo State, that is Folashade Odoro, says that, yes, the suspect has been arrested and he's being interrogated. Meanwhile, the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, headed by the Sultan, had actually issued a statement following the attack in Church Hill, Australia, where 50 worshippers were killed and 40 others were injured. The statement, which was issued by Professor Salihu Shehu, had then said that sadly, there are some who, out of hatred and bigotry, welcome the mass murder. Incidentally, he then was citing the situation with a senator in Australia who was blaming the worshippers for the attack. Incidentally, here in Nigeria, on the social media, some persons, wittingly or unwittingly, have been foolishly calling for the same thing to come to Nigeria. In fact, one person on the social media, he was very specific. He said, let them come to National Mosque in Nigeria. Now, this kind of people tend to hide their criminality on the social media, and this kind of inviting persons to violence on the social media can have serious consequences. And I think the security agencies should be up and doing in fishing such persons out before they lure some young men who don't understand the implication of what is happening into committing serious crime.
Okay, now...
I think you can proceed.
Yes, I have the New Telegraph. New Telegraph newspaper. Below the nameplate, well, these are stories that we read in other newspapers. George, son in shouting match during Farise's trial. George and son in shouting match during Farise's trial on page 10. And then tribunals. Well, you are under close watch. PCA tells justices. Now, uproar as Senate debates militarization of 2019 general elections. And then FEC okays 27.46 billion naira intervention fund for insecurity and flood victims. This is on page 5. Now, the lead story on the New Telegraph this morning, APC, Atiku suffering from depression over defeat with two riders. Well, he says ex-VP's 1.6 million votes victory claim ludicrous. And now, Atiku, I will recover my stolen mandate from Buhari. Then Southern Middle Belt leaders back PDP candidates. That's on page 3. And the photograph on the New Telegraph, has the U.S. Navy brass band performing during a special live performance at the University of Lagos. Do they really have time to go playing?
Oh, sure. The Nigerian Army has a band. But, of course, the police has
a band.
Has a more famous
but all the services now have very elaborate and good bands.
Yes. That's right. You need to have some good music in order to still on normal.
In fact, most of the ceremonial music that you now play during ceremonies in Nigeria were composed by officers of the Nigerian Army. They detoured from the former British colonial musicals to those that are indigenous and Nigerian.
Exactly. And the Nigerian Police Band is one of the best bands we have in this country. Okay, now, below that, we have battling courts over inconclusive polls with two riders. INEC to judge, you lack power to stop coalition of results. It's on page 4. PDP drags justice to NJC. Court declines to stop Rivers results.
All right, Kirian, I also have a Daily Sun, but incidentally, most of the stories on the front page are stories that you have also read. Let me just take, therefore, the lead story, which comes with a kicker. Presidential election. Atiku APC exchange fire with 3 riders. Court will restore by stolen mandate, says PDP candidate. You are suffering depression over defeat. APC hits back. Ruling party's victory will be short-lived. That's according to Saraki. Details, of course, you find inside on pages 6 and 7. Now, also there on the first column from the right-hand side, Rivers PDP elders alleged plots to shift result collation to April 2nd. Bayo.
Well, the arguments now have left the polling booths. Is now coming onto the pages of the newspaper. And yesterday, former President Olusegun Obasanjo says he has declined to comment on the presidential election of February 23rd because it is a case that is now before tribunal. In his opinion, while he was at the book launch elections in Nigeria, he said commenting on it will be sub judice. In another development, Dr. Bukola Saraki has appealed to his supporters that this victory that the other party has seen is going to be short-lived. He was speaking at the PDP National Executive Committee meeting Wednesday. That's what part of what Kingsley read there. And the All Progressive Congress is also kicking back, saying that, well, this is an election that is won, signed, sealed, and delivered. And the dream that it will be overturned is what they describe as hallucination. So it's now become a verbal war pending the time that the decisions of the tribunal will eventually be arrived at.
Yeah, for the presidential election, the Tribunal of First Instance is, of course, the Court of Appeal. That's and then from there, the
Supreme Court.
Assuming there's an appeal arising, then it goes to the Supreme Court.
Well, actually, it's going to be appeal. I mean, we've gone through that over time.
Well, we didn't see that in 2015.
Yeah, well,
yes.
because somebody accepted defeat.
Oh, yeah, sure. So then, of course, from 1999 until 2015, you had litigation arising from the presidential elections, All right, Kirian, if you don't have any other story, let's take to this editorial coming from the Nigerian Pilot. Curtailing the cost of our elections. Bayo.
Yes, this is editorial that is based on a pronouncement by a senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, who says that about 250 billion has been spent from the government's purse for the purposes of election. This is aside from what has been approved for INEC to conduct election. And it is saying that the monetization of the electoral process is quite astounding and is undermining our democracy. Particularly, you recall that there were ceilings for campaign expenditure, and this is elaborately provided for in Section 91(4) of the Electoral Act. senators had a ceiling of, I think it was, senators have a ceiling of 40 million, House of Rep 20 million, presidential 1 billion, governorship 200 million. This, they argue, is excluding those who do not have the resources to compete in the electoral process. Secondly, the sale of expression of interest were also quite expensive, and that also went a long way in excluding persons. And therefore, when you put a high cost of expense for people to contest and come into office, it becomes an investment that naturally, when people come into office, they need to make returns. And these are elements that heightens corruption in our governance system. And so something has to be done about this high cost of the electoral process and the processes of getting elected to come to serve your nation. In other climes, it's after people have served elsewhere, acquire their wealth, and they come and offer themselves for service. At the end of the day, they end up becoming poorer than when they came into office. The reverse is the case.
We've discussed that several times, you know, on this platform, you know, where we were able to get guests, you know, who really spoke on the issue of making politics business or a venture, you know, where you put in money. Perhaps if you're a godfather, you sponsor a candidate who now intends to bring returns when he gets to power. So it's a business venture that has been established. And some people even claim that there are professional politicians. So that's what we have.
Yeah, Kieran, you're right, and Bayo, you're right. You know, but you know, it's like if you look at a double-sided ledger, the aspect you just talked about now will relate to the candidates and their parties, contributions and their campaign expenditures. But there's also the other side, which is the expenditure by the electoral umpire. To what extent can we continue, you know, to have very costly elections the way they are? And ultimately, you ask yourself, what is the outcome? Are we having value for money?
And after the elections, we still have, we still record some logistical issues. We still record some, you know.
If last year, when the budget was being considered, you recall there was a headline in some of the papers for a few days pertaining to how much had been voted for the canine department. That is to say, dogs.
The dogs.
The dogs. If you, on the social media, I'm sure you have seen some comments here and there. So look, where were the dogs? You know, when these riots and so on and so forth were taking place. I'm sure, of course, they had a way of deploying those things. But there are some aspects that you can actually use to cut the cost of conducting our elections. Bayo, I'd like to thank you for being
Thank you too.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, God willing.
Okay, all right. It's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be focusing on the supplementary elections taking place this weekend.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Daba then and Ishak Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space and evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency Cosmos. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Nigerians, Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture. If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Now, you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, to set the tone for our conversation this morning on the inconclusive elections, let's take this background report put together by our correspondent, Abdulmalik Adiu.
On March 9, 2019, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, conducted governorship elections in 29 states. At the end of the exercise, elections in 6 of the states were declared inconclusive, while that of Rivers State was suspended at the point of collation of results.
That we need to protect our staff, including ad hoc staff, staff of the commission, collation officers, and so on and so forth, and also protect the credibility of the collation process and the result process. We decided to suspend everything relating to the governorship elections in Rivers State, and also all the state assembly elections where results have not been announced.
The basics for INEC's declaration of elections in the affected state as inconclusive was that the number of cancelled votes exceeded the margin of win between the 2 leading candidates in each of the states. The affected states are Adamawa, Bauchi, Benue, Kano, Plateau, and Sokoto State. The concept of inconclusive election has reoccurred at various times in Nigeria's electoral process. The additional burden imposed on INEC to conclude the inconclusive election is traceable to the regulations and guidelines for the conduct of supplementary election. According to the margin of lead principle contained in Section 26 and 53 of the Electoral Act and paragraph 41E and 43B of INEC's regulations and guidelines, the Commission cannot declare a winner if the number of cancelled votes can mathematically affect the outcome of the election. Will the supplementary elections be a do-or-die contest? Will there be heavy or light security deployment? And what are the chances that they will be concluded? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria shall be taking a critical look at the supplementary elections slated for Saturday, the 23rd of March, 2019.
Thank you very much, Abdulmalik Adio, for that background report. And joining us in the studios now to discuss matters arising from the inconclusive and therefore supplementary elections scheduled for this Saturday, we'd like to welcome Chinwe Ogbuka, who is the Assistant Director of Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Mr. Ogbuka, a pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is Mukhtar Halilu Modibo. He's an election observer and head of the data collection for the 2019 Elections Observers Mission. Mukhtar, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, a regular analyst, Jide Ojo, as an election observer, and of course a public affairs analyst. Jide, delighted to have you with us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, Kyria.
And from Just Studio, it will be, of course, from the Sokoto studio will be Mohammed Mustafa, Assistant Inspector General of Police. He'll be joining us much later in the course of the program. But presently, we have our correspondent in Jos, Caleb Gochin. He will be, of course, giving us an update on the preparations for the supplementary election that will also hold in Plateau State. And we've just gathered that via Skype from Kano, correspondent Abdullahi Mustafa will also be part of this program this morning. Mustafa, good morning and welcome, if you can hear me clearly. All right, I think we should begin with Caleb in Jos.
Jos, absolutely, because Jos is one of the states where the supplementary elections have been slated for this weekend. Caleb, of course, you've been part of the pre-election, election, and now the supplementary elections in Plateau, especially also with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, give us a sense of why we are having the supplementary elections in Plateau and which slice of the state is going to be involved on Saturday.
Okay, thank you very much. The elections were conducted in Plateau State, but it is, as it is nationwide, the margin for between the two candidates were such that none could be declared as outright winner. So we have a case whereby the cancelled votes were more than the margin between the two. And that necessitated the supplementary elections that we have coming up this Saturday. And on the level of preparedness, the annex spokesperson here on the Plateau has been on some of our programs within the week to tell the public on their level of preparedness. And I tell you, he has assured everyone that they are ready, and 10 local governments are involved in this. So from the 10 local government areas, we have 20 polling units that the supplementary election is going to take place. So not all the local governments are involved in this.
Caleb, Caleb, there's something else I would like you to clarify. So 10 local governments are involved on about 20 polling units. Now, the supplementary elections you are having on Saturday in Plateau, do they concern only the governorship election or also state houses of assembly elections? And by the way, how many local governments in total are there in Plateau?
17 local government areas in Plateau State, and just like I said, 10 local government areas are involved in this. So the House of Assembly elections were concluded with the PDP clinching 8 seats and the APC with 15. So that makes about 23. But just like we told you last time, unfortunately, we lost one of the members who was to represent Pengana constituency. He was a member, an old member of the House, so he was re-elected. But then, unfortunately, we lost him after the elections.
All All right, Caleb, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed. But what else do you know about preparations, not just on the part of INEC, but on the part of the parties concerned and, of course, the electorate? You can also talk to us in terms of security that has been put in place to ensure that the reasons for which cancellations were so much that the elections became inconclusive do not reoccur again this time around.
Okay, just like I said, we've not been able to have the Commissioner of Police here, but then he briefed the press yesterday where he mentioned some of the successes he's had over the weeks, and one of them was the successful outing during the gubernatorial elections in the state, and that they are prepared, his men are ready to ensure that the supplementary elections come and go freely. So from that, I can tell you he has confirmed to us that, yes, the police are ready. So from that end, there's no problem at all. They've given the people their assurances. And sorry, if I can get the second question now.
Now, you can talk to us about the preparedness of the electorate to come out en masse in those local government areas to vote, because there could be voter apathy with respect to what, of course, has been now an elongated electioneering. What is the state of the electorate, you know, if you have been getting information about how people are getting ready for this election? And again, another is the aspect of security, which we have really talked about, but we may require more explanations in terms of what the security apparatus is going to be doing on that day in Plateau State.
As usual, as we know, they are going to, the personnel are going to be deployed to those areas, those areas that are going to be involved in this election. Normally, when it comes to security matters, they don't give you details of what they intend to do. But that he announced, he said they are ready and the personnel are there. So they are going to be there. They are proactive about everything. So that we took it for their words. So the details of that was not disclosed, actually. So what the kind of personnel, the machinery and whatever, those were not made public to us. But the level of preparedness, as you know, very few polling units are going to be involved in this. And not much is seen, just as the main elections that took place. But then, interaction with the electorate tells you that some have already given up to fate, that even without the elections, somehow the winner has already been known. But then, there are those that felt their votes were not counted. So this time around, they will ensure that they come out and ensure that the INEC counts their votes. So there are two sides to it. There are those who feel, no, there's no need to come out for it. And then there are those that, yes, want to see that their votes count. So in some aspect, the people have also shown some level of preparedness and readiness to participate in this election. And for the parties, I've not seen any electioneering campaign going on much, and the parties have not really come out to make any definite position on what is expected of them on that day. But going by what we have had so far, they are ready to go out there to claim what belongs to them.
All right, Caleb, do the voters in the 10 local government areas understand that indeed this is not voting all over again for all those who were either participated or couldn't participate in the March 9th elections, but that the supplementary elections will be specific to the affected polling units?
I guess they know, because we had some guests on one of our programs. We invited a leader of the women. We had somebody from the civil society, and we also had the INEC spokesperson here. Going by what they said, they are doing their best to ensure that they enlighten the people out there. They know, and the parties, we were told, are supposed to take this enlightenment campaign to the people to ensure that they come out to do what is required of them. These days, people are enlightened enough, so I'm sure with all that has happened, they know that, yes, it's not going to be for all the offices, but only for the governorship. And those that are not supposed to be participating in the elections, they also know. And there's not been any pronouncement on movement and all that, but I know that maybe, possibly, there may be restriction of movement in those particular local governments that the elections may take place, but we've not got any position on that officially. So I think the people are aware of what is expected of them.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Caleb Gochin, speaking to us all the way from Jos. With respect to the preparations for the supplementary election in Plateau State. Thank you, and of course, have a great day. Well, we have just been informed that we now have joining us from Kano, that's via Skype, correspondent Abdullahi Mustafa, who will be coming to you in the course of the program. But for now, let's return to Abuja, or maybe stay with him.
That's right. I think that's before we lose the Skype connection.
No,
yes.
Okay. I hope you can hear me clearly, Mustafa. Now, the question is, just give us an idea or a sense of preparations in Kano with respect to the supplementary election. We all know that Kano election was keenly contested between the two lead parties. What is on ground now in terms of preparations, security-wise, and of course on the part of political parties that will be engaging themselves on Saturday?
Yesterday, there was a meeting between the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and security agencies under the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, being chaired by the State Commissioner of Police, Muhammad Wakili. And after the meeting, I contacted the two sides. The INEC confirmed to me that yesterday, Wednesday, the state office has taken delivery of all sensitive materials and will commence distribution or will distribute to the local government affected today. Also, the security agencies have also assured that more security measures have been taken and more security operatives will be deployed to polling units because during the previous exercise, there were some shortcomings that even led to the cancellation of results from some centers due to overvoting and violence, and that has to do with inadequate security in such places. So the two agencies or the two parties in the conduct of the elections have assured of smooth conduct. And from the political parties, since the announcement of a new date for the supplementary, elections, the two parties have engaged fully in mobilization of supporters or the public to support them during the supplementary elections. They've been going to the local government areas, especially the two major areas affected. There is one ward in Nasarawa local government area, which is the biggest in terms of population in Kano State. That area has nearly 500,000 registered voters, and elections were cancelled in Gamma Ward, which has 42,000 registered voters. So since the beginning, or since last weekend, all the two parties have been going there through the media, appealing to the people of that community to support them. Also in Dala local government area, Nasarawa has 44 voting units affected, and Dala has 28. All in all, there are 285 voting points that were cancelled, and the supplementary elections will be held this Saturday. So they are more concerned about these two major areas, Nasarawa and Dala. So they've been going there every day. They've also been using the social media platforms to convince voters that they are the right party to be voted for.
Yeah, thank you very much. In all, how many local government areas are affected by the supplementary elections? That's one. And if you have a sense of a round figure of the margin of lead, between the two top candidates out of the March 9th elections, what number of votes are they scrambling for at this point in time?
Previously, it was said 30 local governments were affected, but as of yesterday, the Assistant Director of Public Affairs, Garbalon, confirmed to me that it is going to be held in 29 local government areas and in 78 wards and 285 polling voting points. So this is where the elections are to be held. And as I said earlier, the two parties are indeed battling for survival. The total votes cancelled during the collation were 141,000. And at that time, the PDP candidate was leading by 26,000. He has 1,040,000, while the APC candidate has 987,000. So if going by this figure, that it is only the 141,000 registered voters that will turn up during the supplementary elections, it means the APC needs more than 80,000 votes, while the PDP needs 60,000 or so. But there are hopes that more registered voters will turn up this coming Saturday to take part in the elections. And that is why the parties are pushing hard to ensure that they convince the registered electorate to turn out so that they can win with a wide margin, because it could the narrative may change due to the voter apathy during the previous elections. So if, like Nasarawa local government, the Gama ward will have more than 30,000, and Dala, which is next to it in terms of metropolitan area.
Very briefly, where the House of